There is just a man, a woman, and a 9-year-old girl with mud on her shoes. Almost no one who sees this photograph knows that exactly 3 years and 1 week before this photograph was taken, that same man was standing on the exact same spot of sand, staring at that same woman's chest. And she looked up at him, wiped salt water out of her eyes, and said, "Eyes are up here." And he was so stunned he could not speak. And nothing in any of their lives would ever be the same again. This is not a love story you have heard before. It is not fast. It is not pretty. There is no grand gesture. No one runs through an airport. At no point does anyone stand outside a window holding a boombox. But I am going to ask you to give me almost 7 hours of your time. Because if you stay until the end, I think this might be the most important story you hear all year. Ben was 38 years old, and he had not felt anything that could be described as alive for 549 days. 18 months earlier, his wife Sarah had sat down at the kitchen table for breakfast, put her hand to her head, and said, "That's a weird headache." 12 weeks later she was gone. Glioblastoma. Fast, cruel, unforgiving. The kind of cancer that does not send you warning letters. It just kicks the door in. He quit his job. He sold the house. He packed every single thing they owned into a U-Haul, and he drove 11 hours to the tiny falling-apart cottage on the coast that Sarah had showed him once on Zillow, laughing, and said, "When we are old and tired we will move here." He did not move there to start over. He moved there to stop. He moved there to disappear quietly, somewhere no one knew him, somewhere no one would look at him with that sad pitying face, somewhere he could just exist until Lila grew up. Lila was 7. She had Sarah's eyes. She had not spoken a full unprompted sentence to anyone other than Ben since the day of the funeral. She carried a stuffed rabbit named Mr. Fluff that was missing one ear and smelled very strongly of lavender. Most nights she would climb into Ben's bed at 3 a.m., and she would not say anything, she would just lie there pressed against his back, and he would lie awake for hours counting her breaths, terrified that if he fell asleep he would wake up and she would be gone too. He showered every 3 days if he remembered. He ate cereal for dinner 5 nights a week. He had not laughed. He had not cried. He had not felt anything at all, other than that thin constant gray numbness that wraps around you when you have already lost the worst thing you can ever lose. That was all his life was ever going to be. He knew that. He was okay with that. And then it was the 7th of May 2024. He woke up at 5:31 a.m. He had not slept. Lila was asleep on the couch, curled around Mr. Fluff. He put her in the car, seatbelt done up, blanket over her, because if he left her in the house alone she would wake up screaming convinced he had left and never come back. He walked down to the beach. It was low tide. The sky was that soft gray blue that only happens 20 minutes before sunrise. There was no one else there. And then he saw her. She was standing ankle-deep in the surf, 50 yards down the beach. She was wearing ripped blue jeans and a faded gray flannel shirt and work boots. She was holding a glass mason jar in one hand. And Ben stopped. And he stared. He stared for 12 full seconds. He could not look away. And of course she noticed. She turned her head. She looked right at him. She wiped a strand of wet hair out of her face. And she said, loud enough to carry over the waves, completely deadpan, "Eyes are up here." And Ben was stunned. He was stunned so badly he could not breathe. For the first time in 549 days he felt something other than numbness. He felt embarrassed, and confused, and absurd, and for half a second he almost laughed. Because he was not staring at her chest. There was a 2.5-pound Pacific red octopus wrapped very tightly around her sternum. It took him another 10 seconds to get his voice back. He held up a hand. He said, "I am so sorry. There is an octopus on you." And she looked down at her chest, at the octopus, and then back up at him, and she grinned, and it was the brightest thing Ben had seen in a year and a half. "I know," she said. "The little bastard ambushed me." Her name was Clara. She had moved into the cottage next door to his 3 days earlier. He had not even noticed. She had been walking the beach collecting shells, she said, when the octopus had shot out of a tide pool, launched itself 3 feet through the air, and latched onto her. It had been there for 17 minutes. She had tried everything to get it off. It was very determined. It liked her. Ben stood there on the beach for 40 minutes while they tried to convince an octopus to let go of Clara's chest. They poured water on it. They talked to it nicely. They threatened it. Eventually Clara sighed, looked at Ben, and said, "Okay, don't judge me," and she very gently pried one tentacle off at a time. The octopus made a very offended squelching noise, and then it floated away backwards into the surf, staring at them the whole time. They stood there for another minute after it was gone. Neither of them knew what to say. "Well," Clara said eventually. "That was the weirdest Tuesday of my life." Ben nodded. "It was the weirdest 18 months of mine." She grinned again. And then she said, "I'm Clara. Next door." "Ben," he said. "Also next door." And then they waved, and they walked away in opposite directions. And Ben did not know it yet, but that was the moment the timer on his old life ran out. That was the moment it all started. For the next 3 months they did not have a single conversation longer than 2 minutes. They did not exchange phone numbers. They did not knock on each other's doors. But they started to exist around each other, the way neighbors do when no one is watching. Clara started leaving an extra paper coffee cup on the fence post between their cottages at 6:15 a.m. every morning. Black, 1 sugar. Exactly how Ben drank it. She never mentioned it. She never waited for a thank you. She would just put it down, and walk away. Ben noticed that Clara always put her garbage bin out on Wednesday. Garbage day was Tuesday. Every single Tuesday night he would walk over, and wheel her bin out to the road. He never mentioned it. He never told her he did it. Once he saw her struggling to carry a sheet of plywood up her porch steps. He walked over, picked it up, carried it for her, put it down on her porch. He said, "Heavy." She said, "Thanks." And he walked away. Once she saw Lila standing by the fence staring at her. She did not wave. She did not try to talk to her. She just pulled a lollipop out of her pocket, held it up, and put it on the fence post. An hour later it was gone. 3 weeks after they met, Lila walked into Clara's yard while she was gardening. She walked right up to her, pulled Mr. Fluff out from under her jacket, and handed him to her. She did not say a single word. She just held him out. Clara took him. She looked at the missing ear. She said, "I can fix this." Lila nodded. And then she turned around and walked home. The next morning Mr. Fluff was sitting on Ben's porch step. His ear had been sewn back on. There was a tiny very bad smiley face stitched onto his paw. No one mentioned it. This is what love looks like at first, when you are both too broken to know how to do it right. It is not declarations. It is not dates. It is small invisible things that you do not talk about. It is coffee on a fence. It is a garbage bin on the right day. It is a sewn-on ear. It is 2 people who have given up on the world, slowly, carefully, deciding to make one small exception for each other. No one asked for this. No one was looking for it. It just happened, the way tide comes in. Quiet. Unstoppable. It all broke on the 12th of August. They were on the beach. Lila was chasing seagulls. Ben and Clara were standing 20 feet away, not really talking, just watching her. And then Lila fell. At first Ben thought she had tripped. And then he saw her arms go stiff. And then she started shaking. And Ben froze. He could not move. He could not breathe. Every single thing in his head vanished. All he could see was Sarah, on the kitchen floor, seizing, the last day he ever saw her conscious. All he could hear was the beep of the heart monitor in the hospital. He was not there anymore. He was 18 months back in time, and he could not get out. And then Clara ran past him. She was there before Ben had even taken a single step. She rolled Lila onto her side very gently. She pulled her hair back out of her face. She talked to her the whole time, soft and steady, while she seized. She timed it on her watch. When it stopped, she did not panic. She just sat there on the sand, and held Lila, and waited for her to wake up. The ambulance came. It was nothing. It was a one-off stress seizure. The doctor said it was common in kids who had been through trauma. They sent them home. And that night Ben yelled at her. They were standing on his porch. Lila was asleep on the couch. And all of the fear and the grief and the anger that he had been carrying for 18 months boiled over, and he screamed at her. He yelled that she had no right. He yelled that she did not get to just show up and be good at this. He yelled that he did not want anyone's help. He yelled that everyone who ever gets close always leaves, and he could not go through it again, he could not, he would not, he would rather just be alone forever. And Clara stood there and let him yell. She did not interrupt. She did not argue. And when he was finished, and he was standing there breathing hard, and crying for the first time in almost 2 years, she said one thing. I have held 47 children while they died. Ben stopped. I was a pediatric palliative care nurse for 12 years, she said. I quit 4 months before I moved here. I could not do one more. I came here to disappear. Exactly the same as you. You do not get a monopoly on sadness. You do not get to be the only person in the world who is scared. And you are not the only person who knows what it feels like to love people and then watch them leave. She paused. And then she said. But I will leave you alone now. If that is what you really want. And she turned around and she walked home. For 2 weeks they did not speak. The coffee stopped appearing on the fence. Ben stopped moving the garbage bin. Lila stood at the fence every single evening at sunset, and waited. She did not understand. Ben could not explain it to her. He went back to how it was before. Cereal for dinner. Numbness. No feelings. And for 3 days it felt fine. And then it felt worse than it had ever felt. Because now he knew what it felt like to not be alone. Now he knew what it felt like to have someone there. And he had thrown it away. And then one night he woke up at 2 a.m. And he got out of bed. And he walked next door. And he sat down on Clara's porch step. And he waited. He did not knock. He did not text. He just sat there. An hour and a half later the door opened. Clara came out. She sat down next to him on the step. She did not say anything. They sat there for 20 minutes, watching the moon over the ocean. And then Ben said, very quiet. I am very tired. And I am very scared. And I do not know how to stop. Clara nodded. She did not tell him it would be okay. She did not tell him he would get better. She just said. Neither do I. But we can be tired together. That was the only apology he ever gave. It was the only one she ever needed. Things did not change overnight. They did not fall madly in love. They did not fix each other. Ben still had bad days. Days where he would not get out of bed. Days where he would snap at everyone for no reason. Days where he would sit in the back of Sarah's closet for 3 hours smelling her old sweater. Clara still had bad days. Days where she would not answer the door. Days where she would drive to the beach at 3 a.m. and sit there and cry for no reason. Days where if the phone rang she would have a panic attack. But they did not leave. On Ben's bad days Clara would come over, and she would make toast, and she would look after Lila, and she would not ask him to talk. On Clara's bad days Ben would leave a coffee on her porch, and he would take her garbage bin out, and he would leave her alone. Lila started talking again. First one word. Then two. Then whole sentences. The first time she laughed out loud Ben and Clara sat at the kitchen table and cried for half an hour. 6 months after that night on the porch Clara was making dinner in Ben's kitchen. Lila was sitting at the table coloring. And very quiet, without looking up, she said, "Mom, can you pass the butter?" Clara froze. Ben froze. No one breathed. Lila looked up. She looked at both of them. And she said, "What?" No one ever mentioned it again. It did not need to be said. Exactly 2 years to the day after they met, they were standing on that same stretch of beach. It was low tide. Sunrise. Exactly the same time. Clara was holding the same mason jar. Ben was standing 3 feet away. And a very familiar octopus shot out of a tide pool, launched itself through the air, and wrapped itself very tightly around Ben's bicep. Clara stared at him. She stared for 10 full seconds. And Ben grinned. And he said, "Eyes are up here." They got married 2 weeks later. At 6:22 in the morning. On that same spot of beach. There were 12 people there. Lila was the flower girl. She threw seashells instead of flowers. The octopus did not attend, but everyone agreed he was the best man. During his vows Ben did not say anything about love at first sight. He did not say anything about soulmates. He said, "I did not come here to find happiness. I came here to die quietly. I thought my life was over. And then I saw a woman standing in the ocean with an octopus on her chest. And she told me to look her in the eyes. And that was the day I started living again. And that is the end of the story. But there is one more thing I want you to take away from it. Most love stories will tell you that you have to get better first. They will tell you that you have to fix yourself, that you have to finish grieving, that you have to deserve love before you can have it. That is a lie. Ben was still broken when he met Clara. Clara was still broken when she met Ben. They are both still broken now. They will always be broken. Some parts of you do not heal. Some holes do not close up. But you do not have to be whole to be loved. You do not have to be finished grieving to be happy. You do not have to fix yourself first. You do not have to deserve it. Sometimes the person you need is not the person who will take your pain away. They are the person who will sit down and carry it with you. Sometimes love is not a grand gesture. Sometimes it is just a coffee on a fence. Sometimes it is just moving the garbage bin. Sometimes it is just 2 tired people sitting on a porch step at 4 a.m., not saying anything. If you are still here, thank you. That was 6 hours and 41 minutes. I know that is an absurd amount of time to give to a stranger on the internet. Most of you will leave this video now and never think about it again. That is okay. That is what videos are for. But if you are one of the people who found themselves crying at some point in the last 7 hours, if you recognize that quiet gray numbness that Ben carried, if you have ever sat on a porch at 2 a.m. convinced that you will never feel anything good ever again, I have one small favor to ask you. Please hit the like button. YouTube does not care about views for videos this long. They only care about likes. If this video gets enough likes, they will show it to other people who need to hear it. People who are sitting right now exactly where Ben was, exactly where Clara was, waiting for something they don't even have a name for.